Hello and welcome. We're gonna start in about a minute. Just gonna wait for our guest to join. Okay, thank you for everybody for joining. We're still waiting for our guest. Let's say probably a couple of minutes. She is coming. Oh, Amira, I see you joined. Try to request the permission to speak, and I will grant it to you. All right, and here we are. You should be able to speak now.
Hello, hello. Can folks hear
Hello,
me?
hello. Yes, I can hear you.
There
Thank
we
you
go.
for
Sorry
coming.
about that.
No problem.
How's
So,
everyone doing?
pretty good, pretty good. We have guys from Peak here. Imagine that. So they will listen
Great.
very carefully, I bet. So, okay, so let's just jump right into it. Why don't you give us an introduction of what you do at Solana Foundation and what is Solana Foundation? We were trying to do a DePIN podcast where for users and DePIN projects who are, new to the field, they can learn more about what you guys do and how you can help. So why don't you start?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, before I'll kick it off, but it'd be great to understand a little bit of who's in the audience. You referred to this a little bit, but in a small enough group that it'd be wonderful to know, who's listening and a little bit more about AYDO and what your goals are.
Absolutely. So we are part of the DePIN as an industry, and our goal is to help it expand. We believe that the biggest barrier for the industry is hardware costs, and what we do is help lower them. Help lower the costs by allowing to connect third-party devices, and help lower the costs by reducing the risks. And that means by allowing users to stream the data to the projects they choose without having the ecosystem lock. So we believe we're somewhat in position of reviewing the industry, and we see from our partners there is a need to understand what chain is the best to use, because DePIN, in a way, driven by business, because most of the time the projects have some sort of capability, some sort of know-how on the hardware side, and they have data buyers or computation buyers in mind. But when it comes to blockchain, they may not have the chain in mind when they start building the project. And at some point, they're trying to pick where they should go, who they should choose. And that's why we decided to do this series where different chains can explain what the benefits are and what they bring to the table.
That's fantastic. Okay. Well, excited to be chatting with you all. And it sounds like you're doing incredibly important work in the Deepin ecosystem, which I appreciate. So, as you said, my name is Amira. I've been at the Solana Foundation for about 3 years. And I've worn a lot of hats. So I came in as head of policy. I worked on strategy team quite a bit. And now I'm heading our Deepin efforts going into 2025. Um, I'll back up and talk a little bit about the Solana Foundation at first. So the Solana Foundation, um, is its mission is to promote the decentralization, security, and adoption of the Solana network. So when we think about the role of the Solana Foundation, the broader network, we are one of many, many ecosystem teams. And we're a big one of a big footprint. But we're actually, we see ourselves as pretty lean. We're a relatively small organization. We're about 60 people. And we hope our impact is outsized. So we really want projects to come to Solana and see a place to build that's created for them because it is super fast, it's super cheap, it's really energy efficient. For DeepIn and across the board, you have an incredible community. You have the best founders building on Solana. And you have, incredible sort of network of people who are not just founders, but just are really rabid users and are very excited about what you're building. So, that's sort of the goal of the Solana Foundation when it comes to DeepIn. So what do I do? Look, I have a pretty clear set of goals, which is I want the best founders to be building on Solana, and I want them to build big businesses, right? So we talk about big businesses. You have companies like Render, like Helium, like HiveMapper, like Nadix. I mean, the list goes on and on. And these are companies that are building really huge footprint businesses on Solana, not just for blockchain, but for the broader ecosystem, for the world, right? So you have HiveMapper going head to head with Google. You have these wireless networks going head to head with telecom companies. And that's the kind of competition that we're seeing pervade itself in the ecosystem. So my job is to be their cheerleader. My job is to provide tools for them to be able to succeed, whether that's I'd say offline tools or non-tech tools, like making it easier for them to meet each other and think about co-marketing or bundling opportunities. It's working with our product team to make sure that there's really strong tech tools for them to use, to be able to use and quicken their journeys to launch. But it's everything that I can do to help make the journey of building a project on Solana and DePIN easier and faster, and making it obvious that the best founders find their way to Solana.
It's good that you touched the tools, because that's what a lot of DePINs are looking at when they choose the network. Of course, first and foremost, it has to be a fit for DePINs, like cheap transactions, fast transactions, which obviously Solana meets. But the support is a very important stuff, and from like roughly 3 months ago, I had among the partners probably 3 projects who were in decision of where we should build, and they picked Solana. So
Love
what
to
is
hear
the
it. Yeah.
tools? Yeah, I know. What are the tools you provided? Like, what's that support? And I would say, especially specifically for DePIN projects, like, cause you compete currently with, other chains. They're more DePIN focused. We cannot say that Solana is like specifically built for DePIN, but as you mentioned, you have the community, you have the resources. Can you elaborate on tools, especially for like DePINs, which are like young startups trying to get the things off the ground? What do you bring in?
Yeah, so I'll start talking about the DePIN specific stuff, but then I'll zoom out because I think what a lot of people um, underestimate is the amount that it's really important to have an ecosystem beyond DePIN to be able to have a really strong DePIN ecosystem. So for DePIN in particular, if you think about just the range of things that are available on Solana, so if you look at, for example, reference implementations and products that are made available, if you go and search Solana DePIN Quick Start Guide, you'll find a bunch of different reference implementations and code snippets that you can pull out and save yourself time for things like rewards distribution, right? So think about rewards distribution in particular. This is a huge thing that every DePIN project needs to do. You can get that reference implementation off the bat, not just for normal rewards distribution, but for a way to do it using ZK compression, so that it'll be a lot cheaper to be able to distribute rewards. So it's one example of ways that DePIN projects can come to Solana and really help speed up their journey to be able to scale. But then, on the product side, I wouldn't underestimate other pieces of the tech stack built on Solana that aren't necessarily DePIN specific, but have really incredible uses for DePINs generally. So NFT compression is one of these, right? So NFT compression, really incredible product release on Solana, I would say maybe a year and a half ago, that allows you to take the creation of NFTs and shrink down the amount that it takes to be able to mint them by orders of magnitude, right? So when you think about Helium, when they migrated from their own L1 to coming to Solana, they were able to do that using compressed NFTs. So every Helium hotspot is represented as an NFT Solana. They use NFT compression, and they were able to mint all those hotspots, hundreds of thousands, over 1 million hotspots, for I want to say like low thousands of dollars, maybe even hundreds of dollars. So that kind of NFT compression potential made a huge difference. And that's not just a DePIN specific technology, but it's an example of why the tech stack that is meant for the broader Solana ecosystem is so meaningful for these DePIN founders. Then you go a layer up and you just think about what is helpful from a tools perspective. you have a broad tech stack that makes it really easy to be able to sanitize your code, to be able to publish on chain, to be able to test what you're doing and audit it. And again, I would say that's not just DePIN specific, it's across the network, but because the devs are in Solana across the board, including DePIN, because the community is on Solana across the board, not just on DePIN, you just have a tech stack that is valuable across the board, a DeFi community that's valuable across the board, and that will help bring richness and value to your project in a way that you won't necessarily see if you're refined into sort of a single ecosystem that doesn't have that kind of breadth of resources for you.
Wow, that's definitely a benefit if you have a lot of libraries available ahead of time.
Yeah.
From a project perspective, can definitely vouch for that. Now, Solana is not famous for its DePIN. How like
Whoa. Solana's super famous for its DePIN. 4 out of 5 of the top projects in DePIN are on Solana.
That is true too. But I mean, like generally speaking, when people say Solana, DePIN is not the thing that comes first to mind. Are there any plans to allocate more like resources to that, or basically kind of diversifying the projects that are building and make more impact on the like DePIN side of Solana business?
I guess I'm confused by the question. Like, I would argue that Solana has the deepest DePIN ecosystem of any chain by far. And what we do is we certainly want to help strengthen that community, help bring them together, create more resources for them so that they can continue to build. But I guess,
Uh,
maybe
I'm
your
no
question
ways.
is like, how do we,
Yeah,
maybe the
what I'm
question is
trying
like,
to
how are we
say
thinking
is,
about like the DePIN community in 2025? Like, how we can help?
yeah. So basically,
Yeah.
what's your plan on the defense side moving forward? By no means I'm
Yeah.
saying that there is no defense on Solana.
No. I
But
appreciate
there are
that.
a
I just
ton
wanted
of
to
that.
clarify. Um,
I'm more like plans. Like, are you planning to like enrich it or like spend more resources on marketing, trying to get more projects on board? Anything big coming from the defense side specifically?
yeah, I think you're going to see some pretty amazing narratives on DePIN on Solana, and I think you'll see it in a few different forms. So one is, as I was chatting about, just from like the product standpoint, you can see the DePIN Quick Start Guide right now. I think you'll see the continuation of some really interesting product innovations that just accelerate the journey of really high quality DePIN founders to Solana so that they can make it really easy to focus on what's specific about their project and not what's sort of like DePIN generalist about their product. So I think you'll see a lot more of that coming to bear. And the second is one of the things that we're thinking a lot about is how do we help strengthen and make better connections for the DePIN community? The DePIN community is like we've chatted about, it's really, really, um, rich on Solana. And as I've gotten to know a lot of the DePIN founders, they're constantly asking how they can get to better know other members of the community because they want to work together. Because there's so many challenges that DePINs face that they can face in a way that is more healthy or easier if they collaborate with each other. So one of those is, DePIN teams are constantly looking for co-marketing opportunities or bundling opportunities. Another is that they're often building sort of similar pieces of the tech stack together, and so we're thinking a lot about how we can better foster the DePIN community and make it easier for those connections to come together. A lot of that happens informally anyway. They meet at sort of the broader conferences, the DePIN conferences, but we're thinking about how we can do that. So I think you're going to see a really great conference and events presence coming out this year. And then third is, like I said, my biggest job is I'm a cheerleader for the founders on Solana, the people building really cool things and making a huge impact on this idea of community-owned infrastructure for the world. And so you're just going to see, I think, a lot of momentum around DePIN on Solana when it comes to just helping celebrate those wins and those victories. So that's some of what you can expect in 2025 without being able to go into, I'd say, detail I can't share right now, but you're just going to see a lot of that.
Thank you. Well, sounds like an invite-only events, but sounds like a very good one. So
So I wouldn't
definitely.
say that they're all invite only by any means. It's more like there'll be a spread of things that are aimed just at founders. There's of course like the bigger events like Breakpoint. There's presence at other events. So I'll be at Consensus Hong Kong next month. And so there's sort of a big spread of what will be around. So I can't, I can't list out the entire calendar right now. Like it's still coming together, but you'll see Solana in a lot of different places. And some of the events will be for founders in particular, or sort of specific segments of the DePIN community. But I don't think it's not like an invite only event scene necessarily.
Got it. Is it going to be like Solana and DePIN? Like, because I'm going to pretty much all major conferences out there, and as a founder of a DePIN project, I find the most value in side events that are DePIN focused, because that's the crowds where like it yields the most business. So if you guys gonna make events focus specifically on DePIN, I promise you the founders would love it. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
no
Well,
matter where they go.
send me your event schedule, man. I'd love to figure out where we'll be in the same place and make sure we're finding each other. Because I agree. Like I think the
Sounds good.
finding the
That's,
ticket to the major event is not like the fun part. It's like the side events, the dinners, or
yeah.
wherever it is where you see other deep in folks. And so, the question is, how do we figure out how to make that um as accessible as possible and really be able to make those opportunities really useful? Because I think um everyone in crypto has this problem, which is you can go to so many different conferences, and it's just difficult to actually like sit down and get your work done, right? And so the question
Yeah.
is, if we're going to show up at a conference or we're going to tell founders like they should come to a conference or event because we're doing something at one, we want to make sure it's really worth their while. And so that's like the big challenge. Is like we can show up at a bunch of events and make sure that people are learning about DePIN on Solana, but what I really want to do is make sure that the events are worthwhile for the founders who are building something and really need to spend most of their time building, but are stealing away for a few days because we've told them they can expect something valuable out of it.
Well, we definitely should connect regarding that. Amira, let's zoom out a little and talk about the DePIN industry in general. So from my experience, the elephant in the room with pretty much every DePIN project is the demand. From your perspective, for the DePIN, where the demand will come from within the next 3 to 5 years? Where do you see it's coming from?
And you're talking about node demand, right?
We can say no demand. It can be like whatever, like it can be computation or it can be data itself. Cause like we specifically focus on data collection, but we don't have to limit ourselves to that in general for DePIN, let's say for data, just to narrow it down. Where do you see the demand for data from the DePINs coming from?
Um, so it's a good question because I think it really varies by project, right? So the type of project that you might get from a mapping or sensory project is going to be really different from like a consumer healthcare project. Where I think we'll see a lot of the data though is from, classic Web 2 or even like non-web companies at all. I think what really inspires me when I look at different DeepIn projects is the granularity of the data they're able to get, how often they're able to refresh the data. It really is offering, I think, a super credible threat and alternative to some of these other giants out there that have put out a ton of infrastructure um, to do this kind of data collection. So it's a vague answer, but I'll offer like a company like GeoNet is built on Solana. They do like really high level detailed mapping, right? So that's like you can put out a robot and they'll map down to the inch, and this kind of data is really useful for a lot of different types of industries out there, right? It's useful for people in agriculture, it's useful for defense, and so the question is, I think, um, really key to sort of company by company or sort of vertical by vertical of where the sort of like demand for that data is going to come from, and that's where it gets tricky to talk through, right? And so. Um, what makes DePIN, I think, really difficult as a vertical to lead is the types of partnerships, the types of connections that you want to drive for teams in the ecosystem and see really vary across the board. And so I think that's like a vague answer to your question. but feel free to poke me
No,
more.
but it makes sense when it comes to the type of the data. That's absolutely right. I mean, you can get dash cams, and you can get stuff like environmental data, and that's completely different buyers and completely different models. But in general, you think it would be the Web 2 world, to my understandings.
Or not even web, right? Like,
Oh yeah, okay.
I think you're going to see like, I'm like sort of making up companies here, so don't take me at my word, but I think you'll see like companies like John Deere or, um, 3M, or probably not Crayola, but Crayola, like, or big like healthcare companies, like start to really pay attention to this data, because it's undeniable. Like, we look at someone who's buying DePIN, data that comes from DePIN type sources, and the pitch to these companies isn't, hey, buy crypto, right? Or this is a Web3 based project. Like, the pitch is, we are able to get more data that's more granular or better than anything else in industry. And it's a richer, broader data source. Because we have our community help build out whatever this sort of tapestry of data is. And that pitch is really easy, and none of it requires using the word crypto, right? And so I think you'll actually see the sales cycle into these types of more traditional companies that might not see themselves as involved in tech at all, will pick up really quickly, as these deepen projects grow, because they'll just have so many opportunities to be able to demonstrate their worth in a way that's not crypto native.
Interesting. Have you thought of like maybe working with DePIN projects on getting those contracts? What I mean, like, as you mentioned, like you either avoid saying crypto at all, or you kind of state it in the open, but you say, hey, we're KYC, KYB, or like we're legit, we're building on Solana, and we work with Solana Foundation, and they can vouch that we're like real business. Because I mean, from our perspective, most of the DePINs we interacted with, they do target either governments, municipalities, or enterprise. And at the same time, they're working in this Web3 world. So for them, it's very hard to balance the narrative between those two. So maybe any advice for those DePINs?
Yeah, I would say, if you don't need to, you don't have to bring crypto into it at all, because what you're offering is a really detailed solution to a problem, that is really valuable to the end customer. And so when you say, like, companies say they're partnering with Solana or Solana Foundation, like, no, they don't. We don't do direct partnerships with companies building on Solana. Solana is an open permissionless platform. Anyone can build on the Solana protocol. My job is to be able to be, I would say, helpful in the vein of maybe providing advice on how to approach these pitches, or maybe there's a conference that we might attend or do some gathering around, where deepen projects might be in more close proximity with some of these buyers on the demand side. But really, where I come into play is helping projects think about, like, what is their pitch and how can they approach certain buyers. And I think, the advice that I'd give them is, you don't hide that you're in crypto, right? But your pitch has nothing to do with that, right? Like, the company doesn't need to see what's going on with the wires. They can ask, like, what's sort of like going on underneath the hood, and tell them and explain how it works. But the pitch is that you can get them the richest source of whatever data that they're looking for. And that's really what you lead with. Because I think when you start bringing in Web3, I think it's quite confusing, right? Like, I think most people think of Web3 and they think of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. They don't see how it all links together. And it takes a while to really explain that these community-owned networks are part of this broader DeFi ecosystem, and part of this broader crypto ecosystem. You don't need to bring all that into the room when you make your presentation. The thing that you need to bring into the room is, the product that you're offering, and how you're solving their problem. And the ways in which you go about solving their problem are not something that you need to start with in the first couple of slides of your slide deck, right? If they ask, of course you get into it. But that's not actually, the thing that you are doing for them. What you're doing for them is you're giving them um, a real treasure trove of information that's useful for their business.
I think that is an amazing advice. All of the DePINs should take.
Thanks.
Now, another big narrative going on is AI and AI agents. And can you tell me what Solana does on that side and what is happening on Solana on that side and how DePIN may play into that whole narrative, in your opinion?
Yeah, these are two really interesting intersecting verticals and emergence. I mean, there is massive amounts of things happening with respect to AI and Solana. One of them, that I think links really closely with DePIN is, of course, this idea of decentralized compute. Um, And then another that's happening in the AI world is the growth of AI agents. And so people might have heard about like the story of like Godius Maximus, who's the AI agent, who was launched on Solana and had sort of this like incredible run in terms of like creating a meme coin. That was the launch like 3 months ago of this entire sort of like subfield. The way that we're thinking about it is honestly, I spend very little of my time on AI. I work with companies building on AI to the extent that they overlap with DePIN, but I have a colleague who spends a lot of his time focused on AI completely because stuff is moving in this world so fast. And so we chat back and forth all the time. Like, I'm sort of aware of the broad strokes of what's happening. But when it comes to, I would say, things that happen less on the DePIN side of the vector and more related to what's going on with AI agents, how do we think about the growth of AI agents in Solana? What's the strategy here? I really defer to him. And a lot of his strategy up until a couple months ago was wait and see. And it's pretty funny how like quickly this went from being like, all right, let's see like how this development goes to holy smokes, like this is probably the biggest story in crypto right now. It's like the intersection between AI agents and crypto, and he's tracking that quite closely.
Interesting. I think we will see more collaboration between your departments in future. I may be wrong, but it
Oh
feels the
yeah,
industry.
we collaborate all the time. Like I'm on Slack. He's probably one of my most Slacked people.
Oh,
Because
okay.
because like these things link together so closely, right? Like, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but 100%, yeah. There's a lot of overlap between what we do.
And it's not just the compute, it's also the data side. I mean, data sets and
Yeah, of
live
course.
data
Sorry, huge
streams.
part of
I
it.
mean, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
actually, sorry, I like left out completely, right? Like companies like Grass, for example, and others that are helping do like data collection is a massive component of I think what's happening at the intersection of AI and DePIN. Those are like I would say the two places at the intersection. When it comes to agents, um, I've met a couple of companies that are doing interesting things like with AI agents and DePIN. So, for example, there's this company called NetSepio which was a winner of the Coliseum Hackathon, for example. And I don't want to get too deep into what they do because I'm not sure the extent to which that they're um, they've sort of rolled out, but they're thinking about how we might be able to use DePIN um, or decentralized VPNs to better help people who want to like launch AI agents, which is a pretty interesting way of approaching the problem.
actually, we know those guys, and they're one of the people where we have in a pipeline for partnership.
Oh, they're
So
great.
yeah, yeah, they are completely agree. So Amira, in your opinion, so we talked about the opportunities for the deep end. What are the challenges? What do you think is what will be the challenges for deep end within the next 5 years? Like it can be political, legal, or maybe it's the growth of the network and the demand. Where do you see the challenges coming? And yeah, share with us, please.
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. I'm curious what you think as someone who's sort of in the space a bunch. I'll start with like just general problems with DePIN or challenges with DePIN companies, and then maybe more temporally. I think generally one of the hardest things about DePIN project is you have to be so good if you're a DePIN founder or a DePIN project at so many different things, right? Like being a strong hardware founder is a really hard job, right? Like hardware is historically one of the most difficult places to be a founder. Being a good blockchain founder takes like a different skill set, entirely different. Like staying on top of the crypto ecosystem is is a job on its own, and it's like more than a full-time job. And then go to market is incredibly important with DePIN, right? Because what you're doing is you're trying to create this broad-based network of nodes and to help your community bootstrap the network. And so it's three really different talents that you have to nail from the get-go. And I think that's like a really difficult problem for DPINs. And I think what we'll see over the next 5 years is a couple of things. One is I think as people get more and more interested in DPIN and sort of wise to the growth of this phenomenon of community-owned networks, you're just going to see a lot of competition in the space. And so for different DPINs to be able to differentiate each other and demonstrate why you as someone who's a potential node operator should work with them or a potential data buyer should be interested in one in the DePIN that one in the data that one DePIN generates versus another. I think that's really difficult. So I think the competitive dynamic is about to get really rich because if you think about 5 years ago, I mean DePIN barely existed, right? Like you had Helium, which had been on for a little bit, and a few other projects. Now, this ecosystem has blown up dramatically in the past 18 months. And so I think you're going to see a lot of interesting competitive dynamics here. Um, I think the other thing that will just be interesting to watch and play out from I would say, like global macro perspective, is I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the global hardware supply chain because of the incoming Trump administration and their stated um, uh, stance on their sort of like attitude towards China and tariffs policy. I think you're just going to see like a lot of moving around of how hardware moves around the world. And so if you're a deep-in company, I think like anticipating those supply chain challenges is going to be something that you have to pay a lot of attention to. The other, it's both a challenge and an opportunity. I think, DePIN is a really interesting type of business where you see the dynamics and the cost structures play out very differently in different parts of the world. I guess every business sort of like that. But I think 2025, we've already seen a bunch of really interesting DePIN projects emerge in the APAC region. I think we're going to see a lot of growth of DePIN in APAC. And I think, the opportunity for those companies is building something that's more bespoke to that huge region, right? But something that's more tailor-made for folks who are users in APAC. And I think that's also going to mean, how that, other companies that are more established are just going to figure out like how they have to adjust and really understand the customer they're serving and whether or not they're interested in focusing on a certain locality or being global. Because DePIN really is both about solving local challenges in a way, right? In order to have a physical network, like location is a really critical part of it. And so carving out sort of where you offer your services, I think is going to be a challenge that a lot of new DePIN companies have to think about.
And the thing is, when it comes to like tariffs and stuff like that, I think the brutal reality is most of the time the costs are passed on to the user when it comes to shipment and the tariffs. So I think that's definitely going to be a challenge within the coming years. But we did talk about, and thank you for the answers, by the way. We did talk about the data side, but on the computation side, we have many companies, for example, Koi, who does decentralized computes. And where do you think they will, how they will face the competition with big guys like Amazon and the other cloud services? Do you think that's going to be more of a collaboration? Is it going to be head-to-head competition? Is it going to be just a niche for DePIN and Web3 or something else? How do you think they will handle it?
It sounds like you have an opinion on this. I'm curious how you think about it.
I would like to hear your answer and I'll
Okay,
give you mine
sure.
for sure.
The answer is I truly don't know. I think my understanding on compute is we just need so much of it. Like the demands for compute are just going to ramp up so dramatically um, over the coming year and years that any compute that's online will be used. I think like I was saying, I think the question for these networks is how they sort of carve out their competitive moat or competitive differentiation from like an AWS. Not necessarily because like demand for compute won't exist, but more because I think, if you're going to be one of several networks that are offering decentralized compute capacity, you really have to figure out like who your target audience is on both the demand and supply side. And so figuring out like what it actually looks like to better serve an audience in that space is going to be really challenging since it's going to be such a dynamic space.
I agree, but I think it will be a niche service. To be honest, it does involve a lot of moving parts when it comes to decentralized compute, and I think it will focus on the Web3 market first before it gets to more mass adaptation and convincing like big enterprise to switch to decentralized system. I think that would be a big challenge for a lot of the DePINs that focus on compute. I hope not, but just I think it will.
No, I think, I think just in terms of go-to-market strategy, I mean, the classic thing on go-to-market is um, it's easier for almost any company to be able to start by serving startups in their niche, right? There's like this whole saying about like how YC companies emerged and like so many of them, like their first customers were other YC companies. And you see that in Web3 also, right? Like a lot of the Web3 services and companies, like they focus on the Web3 market to start. And it makes sense. Like you have to do a lot less explaining. They're a little more risk loving inherently. They're intrigued by what you're doing. And so I think getting broader institutional adoption for those solutions will certainly be a challenge. But to me, the bigger question is like, what is the what, excuse me, what is the reason that someone would choose a decentralized compute solution over, a major centralized compute solution? And I think the answer is like, look, we're going to need a lot of different types of compute, and I think there's some really interesting founders out there who are probably going to find um, answers to that question in ways that are really specific to um, a market that they're serving. And so, like, Render's kind of an interesting example of this, which is like their target market is like artists and movie makers because they spent so long in the sort of like movie and film industry and they know that industry really well. And so I think you'll see a lot of founders who emerge out of certain industries where they understand the compute needs of that specific industry be able to succeed here. But I think it'll be a really challenging market.
No, thank you for your answers, and I think you're right when it comes to you come from serving your own industry first. That's probably applicable to pretty much any industry. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's totally the same, right? And it's gonna be like this in Web3 compute.
and honestly speaking, I think when it comes to like what will make them, convince the big guys to come over, I think that's the costs. At the end of the day, that's a big decision point for most of the companies. But anyway, Amira, anything you would like to share, like any final thoughts with the DePIN projects who may be listening in right now, who may listen to the recording down the road, like why they should choose Solana, just like a bullet point, what the best thing about Solana, why they should come to you, and what you have to offer, and any maybe additional final thoughts.
No, well, I appreciate the time to be here and sort of vibe with you. And I think I would love to spend more time just like sort of riffing on the industry and things that we're seeing. I'll say for founders who are thinking about um, where to build and how to think about their DePIN journey. I mean, first off, congrats and good luck. Like, I mean, DePIN is, I'm in it because I think it's one of the coolest things to come out of the internet, bar none. And this idea that we can really challenge the framework of large, sometimes monopolistic businesses by building through community owned infrastructure is a dream, right? Like this is a really cool space to be. And I'm excited to be maybe working with you. Um, I think the reasons to choose Solana are pretty simple, right? One is it is the place to get just the best technology to work with. So it's really fast, it's really cheap, and the tech stack is deep, and the community of developers is extensive, right? So from a pure technology perspective, there's nothing that you think you might want out of a chain to build on that you can't find on Solana that you'll find elsewhere in like a real way, right? Like the sort of big wins for what you're looking for when you're looking for technology stack, you can find them all in Solana, and you can find, you know, if you don't have the specific thing that you want to be built, the community of developers is um, so extensive and rich and active that you're going to have a hard time finding that type of community anywhere else because it doesn't exist. And the second is, you know, there's a reason that 4 to 5 of the top DePIN projects are on Solana. And now that they're on Solana, you're going to find a community that's there to embrace you, that's excited to work with you, and we can learn from other really incredible people. So what do I look for, and what do I think a lot of people of crypto look for when they're trying to figure out where to work and spend their time? It's you want to be challenged, and you want to work with smart people, and you want to make friends who really impress you and scare you with like how, or intimidate you is probably the right word, which is how good they are at what they do. And so when you come build deep in on Solana, you're in the community of the top DePIN builders in the world. Those are the people who you'll be sharing a Telegram group with. Those are the people that you're going to run into at conferences, be on panels with, do bundling deals with. Um, and that also means those, you know, you have the sort of broader community of people who are building tech on Solana, who are helping promote your business, who are developers that you can draw from, who are people who are participating in sort of the markets around Solana, and so are thinking about like you know, who to, you know, what nodes to buy and what deepen projects to participate at. You cannot underestimate the network effects that come from just a really robust community. And so when you think about where you're choosing, it's really important to think about what is the long-term best decision for your project. And if you're going to get a short-term bump from, you know, building somewhere else, you know, that's hard to walk away from. But the thing that you want to think about is what is best for the long-term viability of your project, and that's the place where you get access to the best founders, the deepest technology stack, and the place where like a lot of people have fun building and have fun rooting for your project. Because I think anyone who's been to a hacker house or Breakpoint knows that a lot of people are just rooting for Solana projects there. And so, you know, you come build on Solana, you're gonna have a lot of fun.
Well, Amira, thank you so much for coming today and sharing information with us. If anybody wants to learn more, you can go to Solana, and I mean, you won't have troubles finding it, believe me. Again, Amira, thank you so much, and we hope to hear more about different stuff happening on Solana. I think you did a great job, probably the best in the industry, and we have high expectations of you. Thank you.
Appreciate the time. Thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Well, you have a good one.